Well, we're all set to begin with our next session on how technology is revolutionizing clinical trials. What's next? A lot on this. We'll also be talking and touching upon how data security consideration with IoT for clinical trials is important, how leveraging machine learnings and artificial intelligence to predict what is happening with consumers and patients. And our speaker will also touch upon the best practices for working with digital data. I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to Dr. Pramod Garg, Executive Director, Translational Health Science and Technology Institute at Delhi NCR, Professor Gastroenterology, AIIMS New Delhi. A very warm welcome to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this introduction, and thank you very much to the organizers of Economic Times MedTech Summit for having invited me to this very important meeting. And as you just said, that my topic for today's discussion is how technology is revolutionizing clinical trials, what is next. But I would also touch upon what is already here. So, and we'll see as it progresses. Now, what is a clinical trial? So if we have to define it, we can say it is a kind of research study to investigate the safety, and that's important, and efficacy of a product or an intervention, which could be either a medication, a device, a surgical procedure, diagnostic test, or even behavioral therapy in human subjects in an unbiased manner. So that is how we can define, rather simplistically, a clinical trial. So for those of you who are uninitiated about clinical trials, and I know there could be many people in the audience who may not have either done or know about clinical trials. What a clinical trial is that you have two groups of people here, which you actually divide rather randomly, what we call as randomization, into say group A or group B. And I'm taking the example of a clinical trial for efficacy of vaccines, because everybody now is quite conversant about vaccines. And then you divide these patients into two groups. You give one group a vaccine, another group no vaccine, and you follow them up over a period of time for say 6 months or so, and find out the number of patients or people developing COVID-19 in the vaccine group versus the non-vaccine group. And then you can have numbers like this, and you can say the vaccine efficacy is 50% or higher. These trials obviously are complex, they take time, they take a lot of money, but this is the essence of randomized clinical trials to evaluate the effectiveness and safety of various interventions. So who are the stakeholders in clinical trials? Stakeholders are the sponsors, for example, a pharmaceutical company, the trialists, that means we have doctors who are conducting the trials, or healthcare workers, and most importantly, participants who are the main subjects of clinical trials, and of course, the regulators, which includes various government agencies and others, regulators. And my talk will be directed towards each of these stakeholders. So what are the key aspects of clinical trials? First is, and these are basically not only as aspects, but also components. So first is we need to define a research question. The research question is, for example, we want to test the efficacy of a drug A for diabetes. So it could be any other disease for that matter. Then we need to have a design, and most commonly used design is a randomized controlled trial. Then we need to have an ethical approval from your institutional ethics committee to make sure that the trial design follows all ethical requirements. Then we need to select our participants based on certain inclusion and exclusion criteria. We need to consent them for participation voluntarily, and that's very important. We need to, after we recruit them, we need to make sure they are retained in the trial. And then we give the intervention, which is, for example, a drug or a procedure or a device. And then you evaluate the safety and efficacy of that intervention, and we collect data while we evaluate, which is need to be analyzed properly. These are the primarily components of a clinical trial. And these are the steps when you need to perform. You plan, you set up, you conduct, you analyze, you report, and finally you publish. So mainly it is the conduct of a clinical trial where we have some problems. For example, you may have participants coming from long distances. For example, in an institution like AIMS, people come from all the places. Some of the trials require frequent visits, and which may be a problem for elderly and frail people. There could be personal biases when you actually see a participant or a patient and want to recruit. I may not like someone, or we may not include elderly people for various reasons. We may not include people of certain ethnicity. So there could be personal biases of the trialist. Then when we talk about data collection and data entry, there could be errors in data collection and entry. And of course, most clinical trials, unless they are smaller trials or investigator-initiated trials, are associated with high costs. Actually, if you look at the global cost of clinical trials, it could be in 8 to 10 billions of dollars annually all over the world. So how the technology could be leveraged and could be utilized to support clinical trial conduct? And I'm talking about digital technologies. Actually, nowadays, everything is digital, and these technologies could be used at every stage. For example, participant recruitment and retention, data management, trial management, good documentation, remote source data verification, and data security and privacy. So use of technology, and this is what is now known as digitized clinical trials or digital clinical trials. And here what it means is that we are just using technology to aid in our conduct of a trial. We could advertise our trial. For example, recently you might have seen or heard that there were trial advertisement about use of booster vaccination, either heterologous or homologous for COVID-19. And this is how you can increase recruitment process. For participants, nowadays we can use the technology to recruit them online, consent them online, and also make sure that they are retained in the trial. And this is also done by frequently contacting them, reminding them about the intervention or a drug, and also to monitor during the trial whether they are taking your drug or not. Are they having any safety issues or adverse events of the intervention? We have been using paper data capture for quite long, but as you would realize, it's a long and tedious process. There are multiple steps. We have to make sure that the CRFs are filled properly. There are different steps for making sure the data are correctly captured, including quality check. But of course, there are problems with this. There could be data entry errors, delay in timelines from data capture to clean data. And of course, there are issues with data security and backup. So use of technology, when we talk about conduct of trials, I mean, nowadays it is very common to have handheld devices with soft copies of case record form where directly data can be captured and data can be stored. Now, this data capture is nowadays done in the periphery with the field workers. But also now what is happening is that you don't need a field worker. You can actually directly capture the data from the participant or patient on various mobile devices. And for example, you can create various kinds of softwares for data entry and for data capture. And this is very safe and secure. You make sure that there is no error in data entry, and all kinds of fields can be easily filled up in this process. Such softwares are also available commercially and can also be designed in-house depending on your needs, and also be customized. This is something that has been developed at my institute at no cost to us. Of course, we have a big department of clinical service agency which oversees and conducts many clinical trials. Now, so electronic data capture, of course, provides you much more benefits, data security and password protection. There are electronic signatures, clear audit trail is there. We can have validation of our data. Data encryption is another important thing, and it can be stored securely. So I think it saves time, it saves money, and it's more secure. So what are the elements of a digital clinical trial? It can be divided into three major headings. One is digital recruitment retention. As I mentioned, this could be done through social media engagement, online consenting is possible, and we can also do ethics approval, digital health data collection. And again, here patient reported outcomes, digital biomarkers through wearable and mobile sensing technologies, and also in data analytics. Real world data can be captured, and also now with machine learning and artificial intelligence, this could be possible to have a better grip on your data and analysis. So use of social media for advising trials, inviting participants for central randomization. Nowadays, randomization is the key for any clinical trial. And there could be biases. There are many methods for that, but I think use of technology helps in proper randomization at a central place, even though you have multiple sites where participants are being recruited. Patient inclusion criteria can be told to everyone, and we can evaluate digital imaging and decide what to do in a particular patient. And I'll just show you an example of a CT scan. It is a CT scan film of a patient who had pancreatitis. So this kind of imaging come on a WhatsApp to the trial investigator, the main trial investigator. He will look at this image or a video of a CT scan on the WhatsApp, on this mobile. And this is my own personal experience that I'm sharing. And based on this CT scan that I've seen on my WhatsApp, on my mobile, I will tell the trial investigators what intervention to give, whether this patient is fit for inclusion or not. So this is something which comes very handy for conduct of clinical trials. So data collection can be done at source, and nowadays there's so many wearable devices. We can monitor ECG, heart rate, respiratory rate, oxygen saturation, calorie consumption, sleep, etc. Tablet-based data entry can be done at the first contact. Data can be transferred easily through cloud, and we can access electronic hospital records and also align them with the data that we are capturing. And very importantly, patient-reported outcomes and endpoints can be easily recorded digitally nowadays. For data management, which is the key for any clinical trials, for interpretation, as I said, machine learning and artificial intelligence has come in a big way. What you do is repeatedly feed the data into software, data or images, and then there is a pattern recognition based on which the machine learning happens, and it can tell you once you give this new image what the diagnosis is. I think this is being done regularly now. It has actually reached from a stage of clinical trial to the clinic where patients are treated. So another technology which is coming in is a trial management system for all kinds of clinical trials. Multiple e-clinical tools are available nowadays. They are quite efficient, also reduce cost, and also make sure that you can monitor your trial properly. So it can be integrated with other digital platforms as well. So this is how, you can review participant visits, schedule for the day. You can monitor and track the data which is being entered at sites. And there are so many parts of it that you can easily monitor whether you are doing it right way or not. Are there missing data or not? Is there a problem in the data collection or not? And longitudinally, you can see how the trial is progressing, what are the problems, whether electronic CRF has been compiled or completed or not, whether there's data discrepancy, edit checks, missing pages, missing signature, so many things that are cross-check, you can cross-check easily. There are also tools for trial management. And now we have something like an electronic trial master file. You can store data, organize it well. Instant document retrieval can be done, which is, of course, not very difficult. You can tag documents, metadata card can be created. And obviously, quality control check is very, very important part of a clinical trial. So instead of a paper and a pen and a huge amount of, these copies and case record forms and files, you can do it easily through your electronic data capturing. So I'll give an example of a study that we conducted last year during the peak of Delta infection. And that was a time that actually there was so much of problem and lockdown, and people couldn't do anything, and we had to study the effectiveness of Covishield vaccine against Delta. So how do you do that? So we actually did everything online. So we designed the study, we took ethical approval online, we took regulatory approval online, we contacted participants online, we consented them online, and then we captured all the data from them online and telephonically also. And then there was a quality control done. And at the end of it, we had huge number of participants and large amount of data which we could capture and make sure that quality is not compromised. And when we analyzed, we published this in the Lancet last year, we showed that the effectiveness of Covishield was about 63%. And this has been later, shown similar results in other studies as well. And what more importantly, we showed that there are preserved cellular immune responses against Delta variant, although the neutralization was less. So this is how at the height of a problem, at the height of a pandemic, we could conduct this study digitally. But there are, of course, many concerns. For example, data quality may still be a problem. Privacy of participants is another problem. Data security, when you capture data and you transfer to other sites through cloud, there could be problem with data security. And I think one of the very important issue is the disconnect between trialist and technologist. So when you talk about clinical trials, these are doctors, physicians, surgeons who are going to recruit patients, who are going to, conduct the trial, but they don't understand the current technology. They will be handicapped if you give them a very, very sophisticated or a complex kind of a software. So I think there is a disconnect even today. So I, for example, conduct clinical trials, but I'm not very conversant with the current digital technologies. So this is a major concern. So what is the way forward? I think we have to invest in training the healthcare professionals who conduct the trials, training of ethics committee also, because they are the ones who are going to ultimately approve the trials. And if they don't understand the technology, if they don't understand how you're going to consent patients and monitor the trial, they won't give you approval. And similarly, I think data safety monitoring board members should also be educated about the digital trials and how you can actually better monitor these trials. We have to have investigator-friendly e-clinical softwares. As I said, many of these softwares are rather complex. And also, we have to sensitize regulatory bodies, because they are the ones who are going to ultimately approve products. If they don't understand the way the clinical trial has been performed digitally or making use of digital technologies, I think they won't approve it. So the ethics committee, DSMB, and regulatory bodies should also be sensitized and trained. Cybersecurity is another issue where we have to make sure that data is secured properly. We have to have medical grade personal sensors, the Internet of Things. So today you have a watch which will give you a ECG or a heart rate, but I'm not sure it provides very accurate data. So there is a need for developing medical grade personal sensors with Internet of Things, which will ensure that your data quality is good. We have to have Wi-Fi access in remote areas, because then only you can have digital data capture. And there are some things which are already ongoing, like Clinical Trials Transformation Initiative, but this is not something that is being practiced in India. And I think we have to have more workshops on these initiatives, which will educate the healthcare professionals who are going to conduct the clinical trials. So I think we are in the era of digitized clinical trials, regulatory oversight, guidance for private data privacy, security are very important issues. And my hope is that this pandemic will faster guidance documents on digitizing clinical trials. With this, I will end my talk and happy to take questions. Thank you for your kind attention and the opportunity to discuss.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Pramod Garg. And you shared some fantastic examples with us here, and some from your own personal experience as well. And this is really what digitization is going to do and change when it comes to clinical trials right here. You also showed us various pointers on regulatory oversight, guidance for data privacy, which is one of the major issues that most people are hearing. So we're really is and how really has the pandemic made us fast track all of these issues. A lot of them were taken care by you in this presentation. So we'd like to thank you for joining us, and for all those viewers who'd like to connect with sir and take conversation on an all new level, I'm sure he'll be happy to interact with you. So please do join us in the networking lounge. A lot more experience sharing, knowledge sharing happening right there. I'd also like to tell all our viewers that we have a lot of excitement in store for you in our lobby area. We have an experience zone that's created for you. You can connect with our various speakers, network in the networking lounge. We also have a partner booth segment, especially for you to connect with our partners. I'd also like to encourage all of you to be a part of our Twitter wall. Do take selfies and post them on, you can click them at the partner booth, in also the photo booth, and post them online using our hashtag. So a lot more happening. Up next will be a very interesting fireside chat on MedTech's role in accelerating digital health, patient access, and deliver efficient healthcare. In just a bit, I'll be introducing our speakers. So please do stay tuned.